Thank you. Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm happy to be at B&H again for the first time in 12 years, I think. I was just recollecting the last time I came here was about a third of the size of this store. I heard it kept growing, and I'm really happy to be here because it's a very different crowd than what we usually get. And I'm very curious about your background before I start. So who here is an editor? So who here is a photographer or videographer? So who here is curious about Smoke 2013? Wait, that's good. You didn't raise your hand up. Are you in the right seminar? All right, so I named this Smoke 2013 for Final Cut Pro editors because my background is as an editor. I did a lot of editing and directing, visual effects supervision, that kind of stuff. And I really come to Smoke from an editorial background. I'm really happy to report that this new version of Smoke, this brand new version of Smoke, is very attuned to editors. So I want to talk to you a bit about this before I show the application. All right. So we went to NAB with a really interesting message. We said Autodesk Smoke is changing everything. Not only are we changing everything inside the application, we're changing everything in the pipelines that surround the application, especially from an editorial perspective. So basically what we did is take a look at the application itself. We tore it apart. It's as if we took the engine out of the car, we put all the pieces on the floor, and we're slowly building everything back into a new chassis to make it better, easier, have more performance. We're basically making it also a lot more accessible and affordable because we realized that we needed to make it very, very different so we could adapt to the changing markets that all of you are facing today. So basically, how many of you have downloaded the pre-release trial already? So for those of you who haven't seen the new Smoke yet, this is a little bit of what it looks like. So just a little teaser of what we'll be looking at the next hour and a half or so. Basically, we did redo Smoke from the ground up. So the other big thing that we announced at NAB is a new price. So like Joe was saying a little earlier, about a year ago, Smoke was still $15,000. Now it's $34.95. So we believe it is a professionally priced product for professionals, and as comparison, it is also the same price as our 3ds Max or Maya products. So we believe that it's the correct price to put Smoke in a lot of people's hands. So incidentally, we do have this pre-release trial going on right now that we'll discuss a little bit later, but for now, you can actually work with Smoke for free. So how did we re-envision Smoke? We decided to talk to people because we knew that whatever effort we were going to put into software, it had to be validated with the people that were actually going to use it. So what we did is to talk to a lot of people. Everybody from one-man band shops, videographers, professional directors, professional advertisement people, broadcasters, everywhere from one editing system to 20 editing, 30 editing system shops, just to find out about how their workflow was going, what their pipelines were, and what obstacles they were facing, what are the challenges they were facing. And we asked them, what's your biggest challenge? We didn't specify anything. Is it editing? Is it effects? Is it data management? What was it? Costs? Everybody gave us some interesting answers that we put together in this nice little word cloud, but you can see the one that really stands out is time. How many of you run out of time really quickly when you're on a job? So the other half of you, you're all living in denial. So yes, time, budget constraints, software, HD is in there somewhere, visual effects, all of this, these are all constraints that everybody uses, everybody faces, but time was the biggest issue for most people. Less time to do work, less time to do more and more professional work that is costing more and more money, but with less and less budgets. So why is this happening? Well, basically, if you're like me, you're probably a jack of all trades. You know a bit of Final Cut, a bit of Avid, and a bit of everything. And then all of a sudden, you've got directors that say, "Hey, it's nice that you're editing this story together, but can you do stuff like do the motion graphics and do a little bit of green screen, a little bit of compositing? Oh, I'd like to have this logo in 3D, and I need this by tomorrow." Right? How many of you have faced this before? All right. So basically, there are no more specialists anymore. You've got these generalists that know a little bit of everything, and the specialists are harder and harder to find. Why? Because talent is being farmed into these places where they know all of these applications, they know all of the suites, and they've got all these plugins, and all of a sudden they're swamped in work that they didn't really ask for, but it's there. And why? Well, basically, it's becoming harder and harder. So one of the editors that actually told us, "Help me stop working for free." What do we mean by that? Well, when you're jumping in and out of applications, you're managing render files. When you are done with a project, you're actually picking all the files up everywhere and putting them back onto a data tape or DVDs or whatever you use to archive, because you know that the client will come back in 6 months, right, and ask for changes, or 2 years down the road, and you hope you still have that elusive font that you use for the logo. So all of these things that you do on the side for that client that's asking you to wear all these hats, you're not really getting paid more money for, right? So this is the problem that we're trying to solve with Smoke 2013, because you've got the same paradigm, right? You've got all of this that you still need to do, but it's all in one timeline. It's all in one application. That's the promise of Autodesk Smoke. You've got all of these effects and editing capabilities at the same place. So you don't need to go out to another application. You don't need to get all of these plugins. You don't need to learn a whole bunch of apps with a whole bunch of different hotkey presets, with a whole bunch of different interfaces that don't necessarily interconnect, especially if you're mixing everything from color timing to visual effects to compositing to keying to 3D titling. So we're trying to put all of this together in Smoke. And I think we can do that because we've got 20 years of specialty in the visual effects in the 3D arena, and editing was easy to fix. Basically, the new Smoke UI has a more timeline-based paradigm. So you'll see that it is a lot more like the NLE that you know and love, and it's really simple to get into. So the UI was completely changed. Lower system requirements. For example, I'm presenting today with this MacBook Pro. So you can work with a MacBook Pro, you can work with an iMac, you can work with a Mac Pro. The performance will scale depending on the power of your machine, just as you'd expect from any other software. So up until recently, you really needed a big system to run Smoke and expensive cards and all of that. You can still run Smoke beautifully on these systems, and trust me, it will scream. But you can also run Smoke on all of these machines that you probably use every day. Amazing creative tools. We'll see a few of these, but all of the compositing and visual effects tools that you need to produce these jobs are available in Smoke. And Connect Effects, which is our new tool that we just added to Smoke 2013, which bridges the gap between high-end tree-based compositing and a timeline. For the first time, it's not available anywhere else. We've got it in Smoke on the Mac, and it's in the timeline. So we really don't need to jump to another application anymore. So let's talk a bit about the UI. So we talked to a lot of Final Cut Pro editors and Media Composer editors, and we said, what do you like about the UI? What do you not like about the UI? Just look at our Smoke 2012 UI, Smoke 2011 UI, and we started to see the big differences and how people worked and how people manage their media and how people manage their editing. And a lot of the commonalities we integrated in Smoke based on what we already had. So a lot of people look at Smoke 2013 and they say, wow, finally Smoke has a timeline. Well, Smoke has had a timeline forever, but it was just different. Right? It was very different in the way that you edited clips together. It was very different in the way that you imported clips into Smoke. So we just made it a lot more familiar. Lower system requirements. I talked a bit about this. MacBook Pros, iMacs, Mac Pros. Incidentally, storage is also a nice added bonus right now, because Although, if you want to have the latest and greatest Thunderbolt devices, you can obviously use these, but we introduced something called compressed intermediates in Smoke. So before Smoke 2013, everything you did in Smoke was in beautiful, uncompressed, high-resolution DPX frames at 444 and our RGB files. So that meant you had to have a disk array that could do very high speeds, such as 180, 200, 220 megabytes a second. So that really limited the kinds of hard drives that you work with fiber channel disk arrays or Thunderbolt arrays like this. Now, with compressed intermediates, you can actually select a version of ProRes to render your effects, to transcode the footage that you're going to import, and you can basically work on a much smaller hard drive, just because you can use ProRes as a compressed intermediate. You still need a fast enough drive because you're going to push that drive to the limit, because we're doing a lot of stuff with Smoke, visual effects and everything, but incidentally, the faster your hard drive, the better it is. Amazing creative tools. I'm going to skip over this and go directly to the demo here. So one of the things that's unique about Smoke is our 3D compositing engine, which is called Action. So what's very, very different from Final Cut Pro, for example, or Media Composer, and Smoke, is that we've got this 3D compositing tool. So whatever you do in Smoke exists in a 3D realm. So you might be thinking, well, I don't do any 3D, so I don't know how this relates to the work that I do. But once you see some of these effects, like relighting, the fact that you can actually take a flat picture, something that you shot that was slightly underexposed, or something that you shot that was actually a little too flat to your taste or to the director's taste, you can actually bring it into Action and relight the scene, as if you added some more lights in the scene. I'll show you a few examples of this a little later, but basically you can also import 3D geometry, such as this, 3D models. You can bend and warp surfaces. You can do all sorts of these tricks, not in a 2.5D space like you'd find in another application, but in a real 3D space. Incidentally, that makes it really, really easy to do stereoscopic 3D. Thank you so much. You can put him over there. Thanks. That's better. So you can bend and you can also integrate 3D titles. When you import 3D geometry, you can import a whole FBX scene if you're working with Maya or 3ds Max. You can remodel, you can resurface your geometry, you can change the surfaces and the textures. So it's really, really powerful. And then Connect Effects, which is our node-based compositing tool, which is all based in a timeline now. So it's really, really powerful. Enough talking. So I'm going to do this. I'm actually going to redo all my demo because we just switched hard drives 2 minutes before the presentation. So I'm going to show you Smoke 2013s. All right. So basically, one of the things that is different between Final Cut, for example, and Smoke is that when you log in, when you start Smoke, you've got this login page where you select a project that you're going to be working on and a user. So if you've done any work in Media Composer, you're probably familiar with this. So your user has all of your keyboard shortcuts, and your project, so if I want to create a new project like this, you can basically select the resolution of the project that you'll be working with and the resolution that will be output through the video device. For example, I'm using an IOXT right now. Well, actually, I have it on display. I'm not using it right now. But an AJ IOXT you can use on a Thunderbolt-enabled device, or in a Mac Pro, you can use a Kona 3 or a Kona 3G card from HAA. So basically, you can select the resolution that you'll be working with, and also your intermediate rendering format. You know, I told you that you usually used uncompressed DPX files. You can also use all flavors of ProRes when you're doing this. This is a little bit like the easy setups in Final Cut Pro, where you can set it up, start your project, and then change settings on a sequence basis, or when you're importing files or you're capturing from video, you can also change these settings. So just like easy setups, they're a guide for setting up your stuff. So I already have a project set up here and a user. I'm going to start it up, and I'm going to quickly give you a tour of the interface. All right, so right now I don't have anything in here. Like I said, I'll just import everything and we'll work together on this demo. Cool? All right, so on the left side, on my right, on the left side here, we've got the media library. So the media library is like your browser, is where you import all of your media, and you've got your bins and you've got your sequences. So bins in Smoke are simply called folders. So you can have as many folders, as many sequences as you want, and they're all stored over here. We've got two viewers, a source viewer, a record viewer, and a track-based timeline. Yes, Smoke has tracks. Nobody got that one. Okay, so it is a track-based paradigm. This is what we use every day. Let me just import some media. Stuff that's really new in Smoke 2013 is the MediaHub. So the MediaHub is a modern-day browser. Modern in a sense that I can go ahead and browse anywhere on my system. I can browse all of my external hard drive. I can go over to the network, and you can also go over to another Smoke system and grab some stuff from other systems. So it's really quite powerful. So it's a little bit like the Finder in a sense that I can go ahead and look at, for example, let's go into this project over here. I've got all of my clips, and not only can I look at my clip like this and scrub through it and make selections and decide which clip I'm going to import, I can also double click on it like this, and I get this little player here. And this little player lets me play my clip. I can set in and out points before I import. I also get metadata and clip information about the clip itself. So for example, this I can see is a 1080p file at 23976. I've got 2 channels of audio. If I go to the metadata, I've got more information about this, and I can see that it's ProRes 422. Smoke is compatible with a variety of formats. So most of what you use in Final Cut Pro, in Avid, in Premiere is compatible with Smoke. So ProRes QuickTime files, DNX HD, MXF files, everything from XDCam to P2 to more high-end stuff like RED files, ARRI clips, DPX sequences, OpenEXR sequences. If you're working with a 3D application that does multi-pass rendering, you can bring those into Smoke and actually keep all of your layers. You've got a little list of formats over here that we support. I think the one thing that we discovered recently that we don't support is HDV. And that's probably it. I mean, some very, very consumer-centric formats that some camera manufacturers have, like Sony have these little MPEG-4 variants, or Samsung cameras, that kind of stuff. All the very non-professional formats we might not support. But if Final Cut Pro or Avid can import it, we can probably import it. So when I double-click on any of these clips, I can also change metadata settings and clip options. Yes. So the question was, can you change project settings? Well, yes, you can change the project settings. The only thing you cannot change at this point is the sequence settings. Now, many times during this presentation, I'm going to say at this point, because we are still working on Smoke. I mean, this is pre-release 2. If some of you have noticed when it was starting up, this is the next version of Smoke 2013. So we're going to have several pre-releases while we are working on this. And I thought it would be an added bonus to show you guys some of the stuff that we're working on and that will be released soon. So for those of you who haven't seen it, well, you'll see something that your friends haven't seen, so you can brag about it. And for those of you who have seen it, then you'll know what we're working on. And also, some of the things that I'll talk about might change in the next couple of months. Until we release Smoke in the fall, we're still working on it. We're still adding features. We're still adding back some of the stuff that we took out. Like I said earlier, all the pieces are on the floor. We're still putting them back in. But as soon as it was stable enough and user-friendly enough to put out to the public, that's what we did. So about a month ago, actually, almost exactly a month ago, pre-release 1 came out for free, and we've had over 10,000 people download it. So we're looking forward to getting more feedback on every release that we'll have until it's released. So yes, right now you will, well, in pre-release 2, you'll be able to change the project settings. You still can't change the sequence settings, but you can also just create a brand new sequence and then put that in if you made a mistake. That's one of the things that we're also looking at. So the interesting thing about format-specific options, if you have something like red media, you can change your deburring settings, you can change all of your metadata settings, and you can also do everything from in and out points and then import that instead. So incidentally, you can drag and drop from the Finder. We just think that this is an interesting aspect because you're actually watching all of your footage, and you can decide precisely what you're going to import. Also, if you rendered an image sequence from a 3D application or from After Effects, for example, you can also watch the footage as a clip instead of as an image sequence. Let me just go ahead and import all of this. So I can drag the whole folder right into my media library, and I'm importing it. Now, when you import footage in Smoke, you actually have two options. You can work natively, or you can ask Smoke to manage the media. So that means a little like Final Cut Pro 10 does. With, how many of you use Final Cut Pro 10? OK, we got a couple of brave souls here. So there's a lot of stuff I love about Final Cut Pro 10. There's a lot of stuff that I still question. But it is a great start to the next generation of editing software. So one of the things that Final Cut 10 does really well is that when you import footage, it will create an optimized version. So it's the same thing in Smoke. You can ask Smoke to not only manage your media, meaning it will copy whatever native file that you had over to your Autodesk media storage. It will also transcode it to the format that you selected when you created the project. So for example, let's say you're working with red files, and they're really, really big, and they're really, really heavy, and you're thinking, I won't need the full 5K until I start doing some really heavy-duty effects. So what you can do is say, well, I want to work in ProRes, in 1080p, while I'm editing, while I'm working. So you can grab your red files and import them and say, transcode. So obviously, transcoding takes a while. If you've got a red rocket card, it takes a lot less time. But what Smoke will do is import your native files, so you can actually start working on your native files, and then it will transcode in the background. And as soon as certain frames are available, they are replaced in your media library or in your sequence. So it's really on a frame-per-frame basis. So let's say you're working on a slower machine or an older machine. You've got some H.264 50 megabit codec files that are still, they're processor intensive. You want to work in ProRes eventually. So you can have it transcode, but you can start working right away while your computer does all the work in the background. The other thing that is really cool is that it will always keep a direct link to your native files. It always knows what it was before. It always knows where the original file was. So you can start working right away. The third thing that you can import in Smoke is projects. So you can import an AvidAF or Final Cut Pro XML file and relink to the files directly. So I do have a project over here that was made in Final Cut Pro 7, which is a client of ours called Delicious Edit that made this video for Thomson Airlines for the 787 Dreamliner. So all of these files are all QuickTime files. They were made in Final Cut Pro. And from Final Cut 7, I exported an XML file. So one of the caveats of this is that there's a bug in Final Cut that they will never fix because they don't make Final Cut 7 anymore. But when you export an XML, it automatically registers as an 8-bit file. See over here, I've got 1920 by 1080 at 8-bit. So if I import this and I relink to all my files, so if I look at these files, these are all ProRes files, and ProRes is 10-bit. So what Smoke will try to do is say, well, you've got 10-bit files in an 8-bit sequence. The sequence wins, so we'll try to resize all of my files. I don't want that. I don't want to have to re-render everything. I want to work with the 10-bit files. So Smoke has a lot of different conform options that are all slowly being built into the interface. But one of them is this. So I can select a sequence resolution. So instead of importing this as an 8-bit file, I actually want it to import as a 10-bit XML. So that means all of the 10-bit material won't have to be re-rendered. So that's a big time saver. So the possibility of this is twofold in the sense that you could be working with your red media again, and you know that you don't want to offline things in red in your on your old MacBook Pro, for example. So you had a lower resolution ProRes version of this. You could actually bring in your XML file from Final Cut or your AvidAF file and relink to high resolution files. So basically say, yes, this is my project, but I want you to connect to these sources, the original sources, instead of my proxies that I use for my edit. So it's very simple. So all I have to do is select my XML clip and bring it into my project. Oh, and I'm going to click Save Sources Separately. So that means it will also separate all of the sources. So I bring it in, it finds all the sources, it reconnects everything, it creates a new sequence, it creates a new folder, and it lets me name it however I want. All right. So if I look at the timeline, it just rebuilt everything. So all my layers are there, my audio is in there. I've got some of the effects that were made in Final Cut that are in here, so picture-in-picture stuff and variable speed, all that good stuff. I also have some resize in here because I know that I've got 25p footage in here, 2997 footage, 2398 footage that was all mixed together in the Final Cut timeline, and it's now all mixed together in my timeline here. And it's that simple. It just relinked to my original QuickTime files. That's it. So you can bring in files really, really simply in Smoke using the MediaHub. So the question was, we have bookmarks in the MediaHub. Basically, you can navigate to wherever you want. For example, I'll go to my Thompson folder over here, and I can go up to the right and add a bookmark to this area. And all of these bookmarks are saved when you quit Smoke. You'll probably look for the Save button. There isn't one. It auto-saves all the time. So when you can set the interval of autosaves, you can also quit Smoke and that will autosave automatically. So you can force autosave stuff. I mean, if you do Command S, it will actually save whatever you are working on.
One last question about the MediaHub. If you are using the same clip but you have different I/O points, how is that? How's that managed?
So the question was, so for example, if I have, let's find a QuickTime file here. If I have this, and you want to bring this in, let's say from here to here, and then bring another sequence from here to here, well, if you know you're going to do that, I just say bring the whole clip, and then you can use it as a source, and then mark in and out from the media library to the timeline. Because you can also bring it in twice. It will just make a duplicate with different in and out points. So that's one way to do it. I mean, I could do it this way, like this, and then select another in and out point like this, and then do it this way, and it'll have different time code. You'll just have to rename your clip once you import it to set it correctly. All right, let me just delete these two. MediaHub in a nutshell. You have a question?
Yeah. So is the MediaHub now that is your library? So instead of like pressing the library button, you always have the option to just go to your media, and if like other flames or anybody want to see your libraries, is that what they're looking at now?
Ooh. So legacy question here is the media library sort of like the library was in Smoke 2012? Well, the library was merged with the edit desk in a sense. So there's no double import now. It's really, you import everything in the media library, it's available. So you don't need to save anything into the library anymore because it's already saved in the media library. So folders are like areas, source areas, record areas, like they were before. So it's one of the interesting things about Smoke now is that it's a lot easier. Incidentally, you can also drag and drop stuff from the desktop if you want to do that. It's just a lot easier to get stuff into the timeline and into Smoke. So I've got a bunch of clips over here, and basically I can go ahead and just click on these, and you can browse in your viewer like this. I've got this cute little snake here. I'm using the Final Cut Pro 7 hotkey profile. So Smoke comes with the new standard Smoke profile, which is based on Final Cut Pro 7 hotkeys. So a lot of the keys that you already know, JKL works, for example. I can set in and out points using I and O. If I look at my tools over here, I've got playback controls that are very familiar, that look like your Avid or do look like your Final Cut Pro, playback and step forward and step backwards. I can zoom in and out of all of these little viewers like this dynamically. So this is pretty cool, because if you move your interface around like this, you can make one player larger, one player smaller. If I set this to fit, this will scale automatically. You can also full screen anywhere. So one of the cool things about the full screen is that if you full screen a clip in your in one of your folders, you get this little navigator down here, and I can move from one clip to the other really simply, and basically watch some clips, set in and out points if I want. So basically, you can go from clip to clip, and you can do your selects really simply using this full screen view, which is kind of cool. All right, you can, and there are hotkeys for all of this. I mean, I can also set up my display to see just one player using this little menu down here, for example, and I can have one bigger player. If you like source and record monitors, you can set it like this. There's also a triptych view, which is very useful for doing color correction, for example, or color matching. So let's say I'm looking at this shot, and over here I actually want to look at this shot. Oh, wait, I should be in the timeline before I do this. So I can set up 3 different images and do some, color comparison, for example, really simply using the triptych view. Incidentally, you can also swipe to the right over here, and you get a little menu that appears and lets me select another form of viewers. So thumbnails is here. I mean, thumbnails, I can actually look at all my clips. That right now they're all packed together. So in this little gear menu over here, I've got clean up all. So I can see all of my clips in this thumbnail view, and I can actually browse and set in and out points like this, and then use that to play with or to edit with. I can also select fit all, which will just make everything smaller except my sequence, which is over here. I personally like to work with source record views, so that's what I'll be showing here. So I've got my my controls down here on the same as the player down here on the record side, and insert, overwrite, and replace that are the same color in the same place as you'd expect them to be. So it works a lot like your editing tool. All right, down in the timeline, you can see I've got video tracks. I can have as many video tracks as I want. Audio tracks is the same. There's something unique about Smoke is that you can add tracks by right-clicking like this, and when you do audio tracks, you can select to do stereo or mono. So you can add one track that's actually 2 separate tracks, but you bring in stereo information into this one track, so you only have one element to move around. Or if you've got 2 mono tracks, you can do the same. You can grab all of these and drag them down. Whatever you see in Smoke, you can press the delete key to delete. You can also drag down to the bottom of the screen to delete everything. So it's very it's very familiar. Let's do some editing. Basically, you've got something also unique about Smoke, which is called the focus point. So notice that right now my patch panel on the left, which works a lot like the way you'd expect it to, except that when I drag this little item up and down, the focus point like this, I'm actually saying what I want to see in my record monitor, but also how my tracks are patched. So the cool thing about this is that if, let's say, you want to insert this over here, you don't want to have to go all the way back to here and then make sure that your tracks are patched correctly. You can actually just edit something into the timeline by using this little doohickey. Hotkeys for everything. I'm using the mouse right now, but you can set all of your hotkeys as you want. Incidentally, if I go up to the Smoke menu and go to keyboard shortcuts, you'll see that I can change all of these, and there's a ton of hotkeys. And all of these are saved with your user settings. All right. So if I move my if I move my focus point down to the first track, up and down arrow will move from edit to edit. I can also do JKL for playback. I can use I and O for marking in and out. Another thing that you can do that you might be familiar with is pressing the X key to mark the clip. So a lot of the familiarities that you have that you use every day in Final Cut, for example, are here in Smoke. So what's the point, right? What if I already know all of this and I've got all these editing tools that look like and behave like Final Cut? So what's the point of using Smoke? Well, we just wanted to make the editing experience as simple and as familiar as possible so you could get to the effects side of Smoke, which is where Smoke really shines. All right, this is what This is what we've built our reputation on. This is what we've been known for 20 years. And this is what Smoke's real power is in. It's in its visual effects. So adding an effect in Smoke is really, really simple. Let's just find these. OK, let's use the monkey, because I like the monkey. So select a clip and either right-click on it and just say Add Effect, or you can go to the Effects button over here, and you get the Effects bar. I like to call it the mini bar, because it's got everything that you need, right? So you've got your time warp to do all these time effects like slow down and fast forward. There's an optical flow effect in there, so if you want to do some really cool looking slow-mos, you can do that with time warp. I can resize. You know, some of these clips have a resize filter because they were probably 720p. They were resized up to 1080. Their text tool and the color corrections are in here. Blends and wipe is for doing masks, and axis is our super tool. Axis does not only the positioning and the rotation, it also has the chroma keyer in there. It's got the tracker. It's got masking tools. It has everything. It's like the motion tab in Final Cut on steroids. So you've got all of this in the axis tool. Let's start with a simple color correction. So the color correction tools can be simple and advanced. It really depends on the way you want to work. So one of the things that's nice about the new effects pipeline is that whenever I add an effect to any of these segments, I get this little bar of, that appears over here. Okay, it shows me this is my source. This is the effect that's getting applied. It's turned on because I've got the little blue light, and I get the result. So I've got the basic controls. How many of you use motion? Okay, 2 people use motion. You know how you set an effect in motion and you get the dashboard, and you get some of the parameters in the dashboard, and then you can go to the inspector and you get, you know, 2 million parameters for particles, for example. Well, same difference. You've got your basic parameters over here. So let's say right now I'm using my color corrector. I think the saturation is way too high, so I'm going to lower it just a bit. And basically, I can do some basic color correction right here, and then move on to my next shot if I want. All right? For example, this one is also way too saturated. So I'm just going to grab this effect over here and drag it over to the other segment. Simple as that. All right? So effects can be copied and pasted. You know, I can right-click on this effect over here and copy it. I can copy and paste it to several clips if I want, just like you do paste attributes in Final Cut Pro. You can select multiple effects, because all of these can have multiple effects. So for example, let's say I want to push in to this shot. I'm also going to add an axis. And I'm going to scale it up. And I'm going to move it down this way. All right? Not too much, so I don't see the black border. So simple demonstration of the fact that you can add multiple effects. Right? And all of these are added in a particular order. This is called the render order. You cannot change the order of these effects. All right? If I go to my effect menu, for example, you see the order of the effects. Time warps are rendered first, and the resize is text, et cetera, and the axis at the end. Okay? So that's a third way to add effects. This is new in pre-release 2. One of the things that's been added is a lot more parameters and options up here in the menus. All right? We want to make it a lot more familiar to Final Cut users, to Avid users who are used to going up to menus, adding their effects. They're all in the menu now. All right? So notice also that there's this little triangle under the effect that tells me what parameters I'm currently seeing. So if I click on color correct, for example, I'll get the little triangle underneath here. So let's say I do change this back to about a, you know, let's go overboard. Let's go over 100, 116, something like that. And I say, well, I like this oversaturation better, or actually maybe the client likes the oversaturation better. I don't really, but you have to listen to the client. So what I want to do now is say, well, I got to apply this to all the other shots that I did the correction to. So I can drag it down to the fish shot right here, and it gets applied to that shot. So one of the cool things about this is that unlike Final Cut, when you actually change, when you actually change something like this, I just reapplied this color correction over here, and notice saturation is up at 124. It doesn't add to whatever was there before. It doesn't add a second color correction effect. So don't you hate that in Final Cut? No. All right, so it replaces the color corrector. So you might be thinking, okay, well, this is simple, but I don't really like the color of the fish's fins. Okay, fair enough. There are two color correctors in smoke, and all of these, and both of them are really powerful. So I'm going to jump into the editor of this effect. Make sure that you select the segment that you want to work on. All right, I trip myself over all the time. I start fooling around with the controls on here because my indicator, my playback line is on this segment, but I'm actually affecting this one because this is the one that's selected. Incidentally, look at the little source monitor over here. It's sort of a reminder saying, whatever you're doing, you're affecting this shot with the fish, not this shot over here. So if you're trying out smoke, one thing to remember, click on the right segment and then start applying effects. If I go into my editor, I get this interface for color correction. So the simple color corrector is not that simple in the sense that it's a little like the one-way color corrector versus the three-way color corrector. I've got this color wheel over here, and I can apply saturation changes to whatever I'm doing. I've got a histogram, and I can crush the whites and the blacks. Let me just make sure. And I've got curves over here if you want to apply curve changes and all of this. So one thing I want to point out is that the color corrector applies this to the entire image. I'm not looking at the right image. That's why I'm not seeing anything. But nobody pointed that out. All right. So when I'm doing changes over here, notice that it applies to the entire image. That's not really what I want to do. I want to apply changes specifically to certain colors. So I'm going to change color correctors. I'm going to go to the color warper. So just click on the CC over here, and I'm now in the color warper. So just disregarded whatever I did in color corrector, and I'm in the color warper. So a little like Final Cut has two color correctors, here I also have shadows, midtones, and highlights that I can work on independently. All right. So one thing I want to do is actually, I'll just bring the saturation down just a bit, like this, and then instead of working on the entire image, I actually want to pinpoint this little color over here. So there are secondary color correction tools in the color warper. I'm going to select one color like this, and the whole image goes black and white. It's basically saying, well, what color do you want to work with? So I'm going to pick a color over here. You can pick 3 different colors if you want. So I'm going to pick a custom color, or I could select just the reds, the greens, the blues, the shadows, the mid-tone. So it's really easy to do some elaborate looks by using a color warper. So I just want this color over here, right? Just for the sake of it, I'm going to add a bit of blur to this selection so it doesn't look blocky, because this is probably DVC Pro footage. So you can add blur to your selection. Now notice this colored cube. This is called a diamond keyer, because you've got this diamond that says exactly what color you picked, what tolerance you have, and the amount of softness. So the furthest I get from the color that I picked to the edge of that diamond is going to be that whatever color correction I'm doing is going to affect those other colors less and less and less and less. So I've got this selection. I see that I've got most of that green, yellowish green color. I don't know what color this is here, yeah, because of the blue tinge, but basically now I can go to my resolve view like this and say, well, I want to warp this color and I want it, more red, like this, or more blue, to match with the water, like this. So it's kind of cool, exactly what you can do, and you can change all these colors interactively like this. I could also decide that I want to change the color of the water. So I'll do another selection like this and pick the blue. Oh, I can't pick the blue. Oh, got it. I didn't understand what blue was. So I've got blue over here, and I'm going to add saturation to just the blue. All right, like this. So I've just oversaturated the blue, and I've got these blue and orange fish like this. So you can have secondary color corrections like this. So you can do these elaborate color corrections, and I just exit out, and I'm back on a timeline. And that's, yeah.
While you're in that color correct, I just noticed that it didn't, like usually in the left-hand corner of the previous smoke version, you had the option to look at the matte and result. Is that still there, or not
you
just
mean-
there,
you mean
but
this?
like if you did like F1, F2, F3, or F4?
Oh, well, not in the color corrector like this. You can look at the
Like just
mat.
the mat
Yeah, you
result,
can look at the
right,
mat
okay.
like this and the result, but it depends on which. If you're in a module like we're in ConnectFX or so, you will be able to look at all of these, like the result and the mat and those you're using the hotkeys. So anybody else use Smoke before? 2013. All right. Not you. So humor me. All right. So color correction is, obviously one of the big tools that you can do. And all of these looks can be copied and pasted onto other clips. You can also save these into a folder and then reapply those elsewhere. You can save them to your desktop and bring them into another Smoke session if you want. Incidentally, we're asking people to promote looks and promote some of the stuff that they did with 2013 on one of our forums. So if I'll talk a bit about that after, but we'd love to see the kind of stuff that you're creating with Smoke 2013, because we also want to inspire other users that are getting into Smoke and are seeing how easy it is now to get into the effects capabilities. So let's say you want to do something a little more elaborate. Let me find a green screen. All right. So I've got this guy over here, picks up his tray and brings it to the door like this. So I've got my background over here. So Smoke comes with really elaborate keying technology. I can select this clip over here and right-click on it and say Add Effect. And like I said earlier, the keyer lives in Axis. So I can just go directly into the editor because I know that I want to add I want to do some chroma keying on this. So I'm going to enter the editor. You've got the Axis tool. So Axis looks daunting, but it's actually pretty simple. If you look at all of our tools, you read them from the left to the right. All right, instead of top to bottom in filter panels or in After Effects or in Final Cut Pro, you're actually reading from left to right. So you've got your setups and your settings. I'm actually turn on preview effects so I can see what I'll be doing. And then you see that I'm working on the object layer, and I can position this, left and right over my my background. Sorry. And I can also do some rotation. Now, remember I told you everything exists in 3D in Smoke? Well, not only can you do this and then flip around these layers in 3D like this, it's really not 2.5D. It's really, let me show you a cool little trick. I can subdivide surfaces. Let me zoom back for a second so I can show you what you can do. Let's just go back to move mode here. And you can basically bend and warp surfaces like this in 3D space. All right. So some of the cool tricks that you might want to do is something like wrap a logo around a bottle and then track the bottle. So somebody has a Coke can and just before releasing you get a sponsorship from Pepsi. So you might want to change a Coke can. We do that all the time, but it's simple to do. Not that simple, but it's simple. All right, stuff that you can do in Smoke because you do have that capability. So I also have the keyer that lives here in Axis. So I'm going to go to first frame like this, and I'm going to jump to the keyer. So Smoke comes with a bunch of different keyers. All right, depending on the task at hand, you'll have luminance keying and hue, lightness, saturation, YUV, RGB, and it also has a master keyer, which is probably one of my favorite features in Smoke, because how many of you have done crappy green screen footage keying before? All right, so we've all done some crappy green screen footage before. So incidentally, this is crappy green screen footage because it was shot in DVC Pro. So we're going to try to fix most of this in DVC Pro HD. All right, so it's very blocky. So one of the things you can do really, really simply, and the fact that one of the things I really love about Smoke is that it's extremely organic. So watch this. I can basically just click on a pot like this, the color pot on the left, and you draw on the area that you want to key out. Okay, I'm done. Now, so basically I've got this pretty decent key just by doing one click. Yes, I can see some fringing and I can see some bad areas, and this guy's pants are semi-transparent over here. But you know, to start with, it's not bad, right? So that's a master keyer. You can really make a lot of these shots really, really quickly just by using a few clicks. Let's just, you know, let's just look at the mat for this. So I can use my 4 hotkeys over here. So F1 is always the front, or your foreground. F2 is your background, what you're compositing over. F3 is the mat. Ouch, right? Look at this. It's pretty sad. So we're going to fix all of this, but you know, basically you can see that it pulled off, you know, not that bad of a key, but I still have some problem errors over here. And then F4 is my result. So I'm going to look at my mat for a second. So one of the things I obviously want to do is mask out some of this stuff. But before I do that, Smoke has some intelligent tools in the keyer that actually tell you what you should be looking at in your parameters. Because I've got all of these parameters down here that I could start fixing, but basically you just click on an area and I get these sliders. And the number of sliders will change depending on what you're clicking on. And it basically says, well, if you want to fix this particular spot, I suggest you use one of these tools. So for example, you know, I can click on this, and you see that, you know, I can paint myself in a corner really, really, really quickly. Or I can click over here and say, well, you know, I want to fix the mat this way and that way. And you'll see, obviously, I'll need to do some masking. But you can get yourself out of trouble really simply by using this tool. You just click on parts of your key. It'll suggest stuff that you should do. I could also crush the blacks just a bit like this, and the whites just a bit to get my key a little better. But I'm going to use one of the tools that I really like, which is called the patches, especially around these areas while he's walking towards us. So down here in sampling, I can turn on patches. I'm just saying, fix this part over here. So I just click on it. And then fix this part over here, and then fix this part over here, and then fix this part over here. It's actually removing these colors, or these spills, from my mat. So you can have patches. It actually intelligently saw that I clicked on the black area, so it's adding to the black. It's adding to the mat intelligently. So there's a lot of compression. There's a lot of artifacts over here that I could get into, and then, you know, I'll try to stay out of trouble like this. But one thing I'll do is first create a mask. So I'm going to go to my Gmask tool over here, and you can have as many masks as you want. You can animate these masks. Every point on a mask can be tracked. It's really powerful. And you can apply these in several different areas. I'm just going to do something simple, all right? I'm going to add a mask over here, and you can basically draw a mask. So how many of you guys use tablets here? Oh, tablet users. Take notes, tablet users. We can use Smoke, obviously, with a tablet. It's really quite nice to work with Smoke with a tablet. Me, with my editorial background, I never got the whole tablet thing, but it works really well. It actually sometimes works better with a tablet. So if you have tablets, you can totally use them with Smoke. We support, you know, all the Intuos tablets up to the new one. We don't support the touch stuff yet because it's brand new, but we will. So I'm going to animate this mat a slight bit because as you can see, I'm you know, he's coming over here, and he sort of steps out of my mat. So I'm just going to go here and quickly hand animate this guy. I could track this, but there's really no point. So I'm just going to move these points around over here to make sure that I get the gobo stand out of the image, like this. And just make sure that it's fine, you know, over here. And I've got auto keyframing on, if you haven't noticed. Over here, auto keyframe is on. So whatever I do gets auto keyframed, and I'm going to fix this over here, like so. Go back to my keyer, actually outside, and set the color to 0, because I don't want to have to fix this. And look at the result. So I still have some artifacting down here, which I could fix using some of the blend tools. For example, if I go into blend over here, I can basically say how I'm going to blend the background. Notice that I can add some of the fringing or reducing it to make it disappear, and then adjust the size of this blending over here. I can also work on the color spill. But basically, you've got all of these tools to fix these really crappy mats, but when you get some really good looking greaseproof footage, you can zip through a lot of these composites really, really quickly. All right? So let's take this a bit further. Let's say that I actually want to relight this guy because I think he looks a little flat, and this whole setup here looks a little nicer than this character over here. So I'm going to exit out, and I'm going to say, well, you know, I need to take this to level 11. Spinal Tap fans here? Take it to 11? All right. So I mentioned a little earlier that, you know, you've got timeline effects, which is right-clicking on your effects here and adding effects, or going to this little effect menu. And I talked about connect effects in the presentation. So this is where I want to go further. I'm thinking, I've got layer-based compositing. Yes, this works. I also want to do something a little more elaborate. I want to add some lights. I want to split up my images, or I want to bring in more than what is capable in layer-based editing. And usually you'd go to a node-based compositor such as Shake or Nuke. We actually have all of this right here, and it's now accessible from the timeline. So I can just select both of these, and I'll say create connect effects from these two segments. So I go to Effects, I click on Create Connect Effects, and look what happens. It brings me into the Connect Effects interface. Now, this is really an effects tree. It's basically saying, well, you've got your sources on the left over here, and they're going through some kinds of effect, and you're getting a result at the end. All right? And they're being blended together in this action node. Okay? So I've got my background over here, which is just a still frame. It's just a JPEG that was time warped to make it as long as my scene was. I've got my green screen footage over here, and also this little background was an 8-bit file. I've got a resize clip or a resize node on it to make it a 10-bit file, because that's what my sequence is. So that's what's being applied to my background, and then it's being fed as one of the inputs in action. All right. So if I look at action over here, I look at my media list, and you've got my layers that are being composited together. So whenever you promote any of these effects to connect effects, you don't lose any of the work that you did before. So notice that my key came in. I actually have, for every single layer that I bring into action, if I want to composite them together, whatever work I did in the timeline just gets promoted to a connect effects node or into an action effect like this. Each of these layers can also be color corrected, because I've got a color correction here. I could decide to blur the background, for example. Let's say I add some blur to the background. I can do that. I can also slip the clips. If I've got a video segment that I brought in, you don't really like that segment, instead of going out of connect effects and going back to the timeline and slipping that, I could do that, right? But I don't need to. I can use this. I can also use the timing view in Connect Effects. You still have access to the timeline. You can still do editing, can still do trimming, but it's as if you took in your timeline, you went out to another application, and you continued editing in that. You don't need to do that anymore, because Smoke knows all of your files. Smoke knows where everything is. You can even bring in a whole other source. Let's say I want to bring in another picture. I could just drag it into Connect Effects like this, and then connect it to action, right? It's as simple as that. I can even drag and drop stuff in action now. So in action, what I have is a 3D compositor. So I've got one schematic view over here, which is a pipeline schematic, all right? So beginning, effects applied, result. Simple enough. Action has a different schematic view, which is a relationship schematic. So basically how elements live next to each other. So I'm going to keep it simple. I'm going to look at the action schematic over here. All right. So right now, what I have is two cameras for some reason. I'm going to dump this one, and I've got a camera. I've got this element over here, which is my background, and I've got my foreground that's been keyed that's coming in. All right. And it's got this light that I'm not going to use because I actually want to apply a new light. And Action also has a bunch of tools. All right. Down here, I can just click on L, not play. L. Am I in Action? No, I'm not. I'm in Effects Node. Sorry. Action bin. And I can bring in a light into this scene and basically relight all of this. Okay. So I'll just double click on my light over here, and I can position this light in Z depth. If I look at my top view, just going to switch to the top view so you see what I'm doing. I've got my elements over here. Let me just zoom back for a second to see. You've got your camera over here, and you've got your plane. This is my foreground and my background. Remember, I've got a flat background, flat foreground, so I can move my light around like this, and I'm basically moving it in 3D. All right. So if I go back to my output, just zoom this out like this, you see that I can move this around. What if I move this guy forward? I can go here. I'll just move this guy forward in Z space. All right. So I'm moving it towards the camera. So, but he seems to grow like this. This is not necessarily what I want to do. I wanted to keep the same perspective, the same relative size. So what I'm going to do is just turn on auto scaling like this. And basically what this will do is if I move this guy forward, nothing seems to happen. But if I look at an isometric view, let me go to, where's it now? 3D views, perspective view, all right? And I'm going to switch to my orbit tool so you can see I will orbit the camera around, all right? I actually move this guy forward. So I've got my light over here. I've got this guy that's more towards the camera. Let me move him a little bit more. And you see what it's also doing is scaling down the image. So the camera thinks that the guy is the same height in relationship to the camera. But that means I can also do something like take the light and move it behind the guy and just, light the background, that kind of stuff. You could also do stuff like, have light rays come through behind him and light the camera. So you live in this 3D environment all the time. Let's talk about 3D a bit. Let me just reset this view. I'm just going to go to my default camera view like this and just finish positioning this guy over here. All of my lighting tools have intensity. I can add different colors. I can change the spread like this. I told you you could relight a whole scene. Well, this is the kind of stuff that you can do, all right? Just use these tools like this to make it a lot more, a lot more elaborate. And you can design all of these looks right here. Incidentally,
How many lights can you add? How many lights can you add?
You can have pretty much as many lights as you want. Obviously, the thing with lights is that the more lights that you have, the more you want some horsepower in your machine, because all of this is being rendered in real time in 3D. So I'm doing this. Imagine this is just a MacBook Pro, and I'm moving this 3D light around. It's being rendered in 3D and shading and all of that in real time. So obviously, if I've got like 16 lights, it won't go like this, right? It will still be fast, but all of this is dependent on the hardware that you have.
Can I qualify what type of light it is, like a tungsten light or things like that?
Well, you can have directional ambient rectangle ellipse light, and you can also change the color. So for example, if I say that I want, a little yellowish hue like this, I could do this, all right? You can also position stuff differently, so you could have two lights coming in at different angles, and look at that. And then all of this elaborate Connect Effects script is down here as one segment, all right? It comes right back into your timeline of, obviously I have to render this, but it comes right back into your timeline, and at any second I want to do any kind of changes, all I have to do is double click on this, and I'm back in Connect Effects. Let me just look at my Connect Effects 3. I'm going to throw this away, and say, well, let's say I decide I want to add a different look to this. All right, let's say I like my background, I like the lighting, but I think this guy needs some help. All right. Connect Effects also comes with a lot of look generation plugins. It's got blurs. It's got all sorts of stuff. Stuff like the damage tool, for example. I'm going to go ahead and add this guy over here between the two. All right, and you will see reconnect these guys like this, and damage comes with a bunch of presets. You can do stuff like 16mm interpositives. It's got dropouts, projector guns. You can You can do all sorts of these cool little looks. You've got all the variants down here, so you can do stuff like old film. You can have scratches. You can have dust and all that kind of stuff. So damage and all of these plugins. Well, they're not plugins. They're just nodes in ConnectFX that come with ConnectFX. So we're at a point where you don't really need to go out and get all these plugins because our basic tools can do a lot of the stuff that you'd expect to need a plugin for. So that's really the beauty and the power of ConnectFX. So all of this here is part of these effects nodes. And you can build these really elaborate trees and then apply them on something else. Because remember, if I head out here, I've got this, right. Okay, this whole tree is connected in here, and I can take that and copy it over and just swap out the sources. So if, let's say, you're building a look for a show and you're just going to be changing some of the images, then it's really, really easy to swap out the images afterwards by reusing the same ConnectFX tree. Okay?
If you took those two layers that you created the ConnectFX, so now that it's one, do you simply just remove the ConnectFX effect to get the two back?
Yep. You can just say remove ConnectFX and recover the stack, and I'm back to what I had before. Like that. Simple as that. So it's easy to bring stuff into ConnectFX. It's easy to bring it out. It's easy to add effects, copy them, modify them, and all of this right here in the timeline. All right. So it's really, really simple to build these elaborate pieces and then add titles and then add lights and then add all of this together and then put all of this into Smoke.
What I didn't notice was as you moved the light around, was it casting a shadow onto the background from the...
We do have cast shadows in Smoke, so I hadn't turned them on actually, but you can cast a shadow to the background if you want. So it's on a layer-by-layer basis. You can select to cast shadows or only receive shadows, not cast shadows, that kind of stuff. It's pretty elaborate. We also have something called ambient occlusion, which will automatically generate shadows depending on the way the light hits. So if two elements are close together, then the shadow pattern will be different. We do make a lot of 3D software also, so a lot of the stuff that we have from the 3D software trickles down into Smoke, such as the FBX camera that's common through all Autodesk products and stuff like that. So all of the 3D stuff that we find in Smoke. One of the cool things about Smoke is that, as Smoke 2013, is that we now have a slew of tutorials that are available. So if you're downloading the pre-release trial of Smoke, and I'll show you how to do that in a second. Actually, I can show you that right now. If you go to autodesk.com smoke-trial, this is the way to download the free trial of the pre-release of Smoke 2013. So all you have to do is set up and fill out the information, and you can download Smoke for free. It will run until we release the app. So we're planning a release in the fall, and so that means for now you can start working with the pre-release trial 1 of Smoke entirely for free for as long as you want. And as soon as we come out with other pre-release trials, such as the one that I showed you right now, it will come out really, really soon. And you'll be able to continue working up until the release is available. And we will have multiple pre-release trials like this over the course of the summer and up until the release. So like I said, we have a slew of tutorials that are available now. This is the Autodesk Smoke Learning channel. So it's youtube.com/smokehowtos. And there are 33 or 34 lessons available on this pre-release trial of Smoke 2013. These are all new lessons that came out in the last month, and they're all available. Incidentally, there's a lot of legacy training that's available. There's like over 100 lessons. So some of the stuff like action and the color warper, all of this, the functionality hasn't changed that much between the older versions of Smoke and this new version. So none of that training is really lost. But all of this in the main channel, like this, is all based on 2013. So the new UI, the new user experience, and the new way to import material, it's all detailed over here. There's like 3.5 hours of training for free on our YouTube channel. Another really, really good source of training that is coming up right now, because we've got all these guys that are appearing out of nowhere making tutorials for Smoke, which is really exciting for us, but it's also really cool for you guys because you'll get all of this training for free. So Smoke Training out from the UK comes out with a new tutorial about every 2 days now. So he's got 14 or 15. So timeline compositing, importing projects from Final Cut Pro 10, you know, creating a freeze frame. All these cool little tutorials are about 2 to 6 minutes. It's really grab some information and go. It's really how to use Smoke coming from someone in the trenches, which is really nice. Another way to learn Smoke, incidentally, I don't know if you saw this, but on YouTube, if you look for Larry Jordan and Smoke, yeah, Autodesk Smoke, you will find 6 lessons that Larry produced on how to get started with Smoke. So this is really, I don't know, does any of you subscribe to Larry Jordan's newsletter? So it's really, you know, we've got Larry using his style presenting Smoke. So he shows you the very basic steps, how to get up and running, explains how creating a project works and how, you know, editing your sequences work based on his really, really extensive Final Cut Pro experience, obviously, and now adding some of the Adobe experience that he's had over the past few years. So there are 6 lessons that will get you up and running in Smoke. It's about an hour total if you watch all 6 lessons. And, you know, all these are free and they're on YouTube. All right? If you want to go further, so that's now about 60 or so free tutorials that are available. If you want to go further, our friends at FXPhD have something called the Smoke Fundamentals Fast Forward class. So FXPhD is an online university. They started years ago as a smoke and flame training online university. They had all these tutorials, and now they train everything from, you know, Nuke and After Effects and Cinema 4D and Maya and Photoshop and filmmaking and all of that. And they're really happy to make this class available because FXPhD did start with smoke and flame tutorials. And for $99, you can download these extremely professional classes. Now, these are by the 2 founders, John Montgomery and Mike Seymour, and they've been training on these applications for years, and they made this really nice package that's about 5 hours, 5.5 hours. So for 99 bucks, if you want to do some really elaborate, cool-looking stuff coming from the guys who use these tools day in and day out, it's a really good investment. And all this training is based on the release that I showed you. So even though the app is not really out yet, we haven't released yet, we've got all of this content and this great community that's building on Facebook. So I don't know if you've seen how you saw how to come here if you were on the B&H newsletter, or if you saw it on Twitter or what. I mean, we've been promoting this everywhere, but the Facebook page for Autodesk Smoke has a lot of information about the events that we're doing, about new training, about new users, how they're using Smoke in the trenches. So go ahead and you know, join the community over here. We also have a very active community on the area. The area is Autodesk's social media community. So a lot of 3D stuff, but also if you go to area.autodesk.com/smoke, you'll get to the Smoke landing page for the area. So from here you can download cool stuff like an FBX model to experiment with 3D in Smoke, desktop pictures like the one that I have right now if you want to promote that to all of your buddies. And you also have access to the community in the forums, and this is where the official discussion forum for Smoke 2013 is, all right? The staff at Autodesk hang out on this forum. So if you've got a question and you want tech support to answer, this is the quickest way to get an answer. If you've got something that you don't know how to use, you've got a lot of users that are in here asking questions, and not only are other users answering questions, but also Autodesk staff. So tech support, design, they're on the area. And if you've been following Walter Biscardi's adventures on the Creative Cow, we also have a forum on the Cow. If I go to Autodesk Smoke 2013, you've got another forum here. And again, a lot of us hang out on the Creative Cow. You know, Walter is giving a lot of his time on the Cow, so and we really love the community. So we want to be out there everywhere. You know, you can follow us on Twitter, you can see us on Facebook, we're on the area, we're on the Creative Cow. We want to be there to answer all of your questions, to make sure that you guys get the full enjoyment of what Smoke 2013 can do. So hopefully this will tour of the interface and the capabilities of Smoke was what you hoped.
Is it still everything that was previously available in terms of the desktop effects on Smoke are still available? They might just be different to get to, like right-clicking?
Well, in pre-release 1, they were not available until somebody found our Easter egg and found a way to turn them on. Pre-release 2 actually has the tools down here in the tab. So you've got the desktop pane tool that is here, and you've got all the filters for doing field merging, deinterlacing, freeze frames. So a lot of the times you'll have this one clip, for example, that you just want to resize before you import it into the timeline. So you can use one of these tools down here, which is basically as if you had, you know, a scratch pad. Yeah, scratch pad. So I can open up any of these tools. You can change time code, burn in time code in here, letterbox, do all that kind of stuff, and create new sources from the one that you were working on before you start editing with it. So it's a really powerful pipeline, and you're basically using this thumbnail view as a big scratch pad, like Dean just said. So you can create different versions of your clips like that before you start editing with them. Or you can even take something from your timeline and bring it to the desktop, do something to it, and bring it back into the timeline. Let's say you want to change a timecode, a start timecode, or remove the pull down, for example, on the clip. So all of these tools are available now in the Tools tab, where they should be. Yes. So the new stuff in pre-release 2 also, there's clip ganging, there's VTR in and out. So from the file menu, you can now capture from a VTR. Incidentally, how many of you still capture from videotape? Okay, quite a few. How many output to videotape? One less hand. So yes, tapeless outputs still. So eventually we'll get totally tapeless, I guess, at one point, but you can now, with using an LXT or using a card such as the AJA Kona 3G, you can use VTR input and output. The answer is a question. So the question was, how about media management? So right now, media management is in flux. You can create new projects, import clips, and capture clips, and export clips, and all of that in a closed environment. You cannot share projects, you cannot share clips, you cannot export projects yet. All of these functions have been turned off right now because they're still being worked on. So a lot of the stuff that I talked about previously about sharing clips amongst Smokes in different rooms, Smoke applications, you cannot do yet because they're still simply working on it. So a lot of the stuff, if you download pre-release 1 right after this presentation and install it at home, you'll see that there's a lot less stuff in these menus. This tab won't be down here. VTR input isn't there yet. So they're adding back all of these functions to eventually get to where Smoke 2012 was in capacity, but also added with Connect effects and with all the new stuff that's been added in the interface and the user experience. Any other questions?
When do you expect version 2 to come out?
In your color corrector, are you able to do your scopes?
So, yes, I didn't show the smokes, the scopes, but we do have scopes. So you can either in the color corrector or somewhere else. We've got the vector scope and waveform monitor that's available here. We also have 3D vector scopes and a 3D cube to look at your colors while you're doing color correction. So the other question was, when do we expect pre-release trial 2 to come out? It's coming out soon. I'd rather say soon, because every time we give a specific date, we might regret it later. So very soon. The fact that I can show it to you today is a good indication. So it should be coming out soon. And so we've got scopes that are in pre-release 2 actually, that are not in pre-release 1, that are available now and coming real soon to a desktop near you. Any other question? Well, I'd like to thank you all for having been here and listened to this presentation on Smoke 2013. I hope that you will give it a try, ask questions on the forums, join our Facebook group to find out more about events. And we just had actually our very first New York City Smoke user event last night. So we're starting a Smoke user group, and it's really based on 2013. If you want to meet some new Smoke users, or if you want to meet some Smoke users that are ready to share their extensive knowledge of the application for all of you that are getting into Smoke for the first time, then look for these meetings coming regularly every second Tuesday of the month. So if you want to find out more about how you can live in the Smoke universe, do check out our Smoke Facebook page and follow us on Twitter also. Look for the Autodesk Smoke hashtag. You can find out more information. So thank you very much, and I hope you had a pleasant experience, and I hope you will have a pleasant experience with Smoke.
For more information, please visit us online, give us a call, or stop by our New York City Superstore. You can also connect with us on the web.